Well, welcome to my little compost mine and my son Joe's shredder. You can see I've already used a significant portion of it. It originally was probably about 6 feet by 6 feet by 3 feet, which means there was over 100 cubic feet of compost here. Here's what it looks like prior to running it through the shredder. I can always tell when it's ready. I've got things growing on the compost pile. This is my sure sign that it's time to harvest some compost. Here I'm just breaking it up so I can run it through the shredder. This is an old potato digger that I pressed into service with a short handle, and here's what it looks like again prior to running it through the shredder. Before we proceed on with this year's compost, I'd like to take the clock back a little bit and look at last year's. Here I am aerating this same pile. For this I use a sharpened steel rod about 3/4 inch diameter and about 3.5 foot long. Its original life was probably part of farm machinery, but I can't tell for sure. It was part of my inheritance. I just work it into the compost pile and push it down as far as I can, basically to try to get some air into the pile to aerate it real good. This is really hard on the back, by the way, but it does an excellent job of aerating the pile. What you see in front of you is just one season of leaves. I have two 300 to 500-year-old live oaks on the property, several gums, and several other oak trees. Okay, you've seen how I aerate it. Now let's take a look at what it looks like when I want to put on nitrogen to the pile. Basically, every time I think I'm going to have a good solid rain coming, I'll walk out to the pile and spread 3400 fertilizer on top of the pile, which is what I'm doing here. This adds a lot of nitrogen to the pile to help it break down faster. And I probably just wind up putting about a pint or so. And here's what it looks like. Straight 3400 fertilizer. Okay, let's flash backward a little bit and look at last year's compost. And here's what it looks like approximately 6 months ago. Flashing forward a little bit, back to today. This is my son Joe's shredder, and here's what the line looks like. This red line's supposed to cut a little better than the solid line, but I think frankly the solid line cuts better than the other line does. But since I've got it, I'll use it up. It also lasts longer. Here's what they look like side by side. Here I'm taking the top off the shredder, and we'll change out the lines in the shredder. This is really a pretty straightforward procedure. Just push the old line back through the application hole and pull it through the hole in the shredder head. Here's the second side. And then reinsert the line using the reverse procedure for new line. Pretty quick procedure, as you can see, so I don't mind it at all. A line set probably lasts through about 3 separate rounds of compost conversion. I usually cut my lines just so that they won't be cut by the cutting head in the shredder. That way I don't have a whole lot of little red short pieces laying around in my compost. And here's how you put the new lines in. I'm just adjusting them here to where they're the same length. That way I won't have those little red pieces laying around in my compost pile. And then just pull it straight through. Now I'll do the other side. adjust to the same length, and slide it through the hole, and check and make sure the lines are equal length. And here we go. I have a rethreaded shredder ready to grind some compost. Let's take a look at the safety equipment you really should have to do this. At a minimum, hearing protection. It is rather noisy. Dust protection. Yes, it does throw off a lot of dust. The face shield I consider mandatory. It throws things back at you for sure. Leather gloves I consider them mandatory because of all the fire ants we have in the area. Last thing I want to do is reach in there and grab a hold of a handful of fire ants in my compost pile. And here I'll start it up and show you how I grind some compost. I try to feed it in slow so it doesn't stall the motor. Actually, this stuff grinds better if it's slightly moist. If it's dry, it doesn't grind as fine. And again, here all I'm trying to do is just feed it in slow so I don't stall the motor out. Here's the last few handfuls that I'll feed into it. Then I'll turn it off and we'll take a look at the finished product. Obviously, I've edited out a considerable amount of feeding to the machine to get to where we are now. Now I'll just pick it up and set it out of the way. The little skirt around it is my little invention to keep the compost from flying. It makes sure everything falls straight down. And here's what my finished product looks like. Again, this grinds better if it's a little bit wet. Granted, leaves don't have much nutritional value, but when you've got 100 cubic feet of compost, you've got a lot of nutritional value. Here's the compost pile. Now I'm going to add some ingredients to it. First will be palletized limestone. The second will be fireplace ash. The soil around here is very acidic, witnessing I have no problem growing azaleas. And I've been told I need to add a lot of lime. So in general I put in about probably a pint and a half of fireplace ash and about a cup of limestone. Then mix up the pile real good. After that, it's ready to put out. My grass seems to be kind of ambivalent on it, but all my fruit trees are doing better than ever. The one thing I didn't show you in the video was I had a motor trip. I'm pretty sure I know why, but let's take a look to find out. There are 6 screws that need to be removed. This is the bottom side up of the Sunjoe. After those 6 screws are out, if you wiggle the motor cover a little bit, it should come right on out. There are 2 filters. The first here is the discharge filter. The second is the inlet filter. And here's what the inlet filter looks like. As you'll see, it is pretty well covered in dust and debris. Well, the output filter is pretty well clear. The one thing I wish Sunjoe would have done just a little bit differently was put those filters on the outside rather than the inside. It's not that big of a problem. Take the cover off. Just my opinion, it should be an easier process to change. Here I'm just tightening up those last few screws. A little Black & Decker's cordless screwdriver sure makes this job a lot easier and less strenuous on the wrist. I bet some of you tell me that I sure sound like the king. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on a future video. Take care, baby.